Hello, friends and lovers of yoga. Welcome to Peace, Planks, and Prana, a podcast dedicated to the yoga experience. As a student, teacher, or anyone who is curious about exploring a practice that connects your body, your breath, and your mind.
Woohoo!
My name is Milissa Payne Bradley.
And I am Sharon Niryce Murriguez.
And we're here to talk to you today about how teachers can incorporate pranayama and meditation into a vinyasa-style practice. I think a lot of times as yoga teachers, what happens is that, we diligently crafted our sequence and we're ready to address all these different sort of asana type physical practice postures. And a lot of times pranayama and meditation kind of get put, not even like in the passenger seat, but in the back seat. So we just wanted to sort of unpack today about how we can actually let pranayama and meditation drive the yoga car for the 60 moments that you're in a vinyasa class.
You're in and out in an hour. Even getting there is a rush. So it's kind of like this ultimate irony of like our practice is just like we're rushing to our mats, we're rushing through our practice, then we're rushing back home, back to work, back to pick up the kids, back to do something. And so especially relevant in integrating these elements into a practice that is already it's intense, which mimics the energy that we have in a lot of other parts of our lives already. So we want balance.
Yeah. And I think what's important when we're talking about this vinyasa style class is that when we start to unpack, well, how are we going to do this with our meditation and our pranayama? It's just important first as teachers and students to investigate how we might be like overlooking the ways in which we're integrating this into our practice. And is it because, we feel unfamiliar with them? Do we feel like it's not applicable in the vinyasa spaces that we teach or that we practice in? Is it because of time constraints or our students' interests, our own interests, or maybe even just like the studio's culture? Like, I know I've taken in a lot of different spaces and you immediately understand like what the vibe and culture is of the studio and also of the specific teacher. So don't let the body and your physical practice and the 50 million chaturangas that you plan to do in that vinyasa style class overshadow the nuances of how pranayama and meditation elements can allow for introspective work.
Totally. And I think also for like our newer teachers who, might just be intimidated at the thought of teaching to begin with and holding space for an hour for a group of people. Or as Milissa said, the culture of the studio might be such that like what's emphasized is a more physical aspect. Like, how do you find the courage to bring something in that is actually a really important element of the practice and an important element of our own lives as individuals, and celebrate something other than just going, but actually taking a pause and an opportunity to be present in the here and the now.
And I like that you said pause, because that's sort of like my general take on the whole thing is that I'm not recommending that you do more. I'm recommending that you actually do less. And say you only do 49 million chaturangas that day, but you still save 1 minute where you're allowing yourself to mindfully connect with your students and you're breathing together and you're centering yourself. I mean, I don't want to say necessarily meditation, but you are creating mindful moments in your practice. And that takes some investigation, both where that's going to land, and also it takes some sort of unpacking for yourself. Like that might require more professional development moments where you are seeking out other teachers and experiences where you're learning about meditation and pranayama and then making it applicable in the way that works for you as a teacher, as a student.
Absolutely. And like, so when we're saying pranayama, we're talking about specifically breath work, breath control, any practice that involves like conscious attention to your breath in a specific way. And we'll talk a little bit about specific techniques soon. But for meditation, I think we're really talking about like a larger mindfulness practice. Like, what are ways that you can be mindful? So, again, it's doing less, pausing, being, noticing, and pranayama and meditation are two elements in our yoga practice that can do that really effectively, with many benefits.
Yeah, I'm all about finding stillness. And, through stillness, we can connect with our breath more. And we can also connect with those sort of internal experiences that maybe are the reason that we rolled out our mat that day, or we need to take a little ride on the magic carpet. It's just connecting with internal experiences like our feelings, our thoughts, and our emotions. And, sometimes that internal work is the very thing that turns us off about meditation or pranayama, because we steer clear of like what our monkey mind, our chittavidra is sort of calculating for ourselves, that mind chatter that's getting in the way. And then also this idea of like maybe even not being able to turn off the mind, or facing the fear that we're not going to meditate successfully. I'm doing air quotes for those of you that can't see me. So I think it's about, just as teachers, if we're replicating for our students, right? We're creating visual representations for our students. And I don't know about you, Sharon, but I consider myself a very visual learner. And I think in
Totally.
yoga,
Visual experiential learner for me. Like, seeing and then doing are like my biggest ways to like learn stuff.
and I think that that's really applicable like in yoga, right? Because there's a certain degree, especially within like the asana practice, that draws on the importance of demonstration and then a quick replication. And so I think as yoga teachers that it's really important for us to carve out moments where we're actually like demonstrating pranayama and meditation. So just like I would stand in front of my mat and demonstrate, hips squaring off, well, trying to square off in a Virabhadrasana 1, in a Warrior 1, or also, creating
Or
moments.
sometimes not, right? Like,
No, and that's okay. I think the same is true for pranayama and meditation. Sit down in front of your mat with your students and breathe and meditate with them, or find mindfulness together. I don't know like about the culture where you teach, but like, don't stand by the door. Don't stand by the music station if that's the kind of vibe that's going on in that studio or that space, but sit down, gather around and breathe and meditate together. Even if it's just for 30 seconds, a minute before, like in the middle, beginning, end of class, just find moments where you and your students are connecting in that capacity.
totally. And I think what that does, it also, for those of us that do have the monkey mind and we're distracted by any like sensory stimulation around us, it gives us something to focus on. It just lets the teacher create an energy in the space of, okay, here's a focal point for you to put your gaze on, for you to put your energy towards. And it can be very unifying as well for the class to all be collectively observing something together and then practicing something together. And so, I mean, that's the benefit of being in a space together, whether it's an actual space or a virtual space in the Zoom room, for example. So I think those moments that we create a shift in energy, especially in our vinyasa classes that are always raw, 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 are really important, because it gives our bodies, our minds, and our souls like balance and equilibrium. And I know I'm looking for more of that in my life. There are just so many benefits of it, right? So, like, you
Yeah.
know, the whys are numerous, right? Like, there's so many health benefits of integrating pranayama and meditation, mindfulness into our vinyasa classes. Specifically, a pranayama practice, a simple one. So let's say taking 5 minutes 3 times a day. I mean, even if you did this honestly 1 time a day, and took a 5-second inhale, 5-second exhale for 5 minutes.
Wait, can we
That,
just all take a 5-second inhale and a 5-second
like,
exhale?
exactly. Let's do it. Okay, we're doing it now. But like that alone can, over the course of a few days, elevate your heart rate variability. And all that means is that a higher heart rate variability means there's more space between your heart rates. So your heart is like working more effectively. So there's an inverse relationship then with your resting heart rate. So when the HRV goes up, usually your RHR, resting heart rate, goes down. So doing that breathing technique has a positive impact on both. You'll see your heart rate variability go up and your resting heart rate go down. And both of those are just signs that like your heart is working more efficiently. It is doing less. So that pause again that we're speaking about with like pranayama meditation in your vinyasa class, like your body is literally doing that. It's like I can actually optimize the state of my body by doing less. Like your heart is literally doing that, and that's freaking cool. Um, and
So would you
so
like start with that, Sharon, like with your students
I
in a
think it
vinyasa
depends.
style class?
Yeah, like I think it depends for me. I think it depends on the class. Like it's like usually like with anything a read the room type of situation. I think I would yes. So the answer is yes, and I would totally start with that like a 6 p.m. vinyasa class during the week when people are rushing around and like you can palpably feel the energy as people are arriving in the studio like they might want to be on their phones, they might want to be like just a lot of like needing to let go of the energy. They might also just be really tired. So in that case, I think that would be a freaking beautiful way to start class. And I would definitely do that. And it may have, it's interesting because the same thing can have different effects, right? Because like that at 6 p.m., maybe at 6 a.m. might elevate the energy because you have people coming in from a more relaxed state, and that attention to detail for the breath might elevate people's consciousness that then they can translate into their vinyasa practice as their bodies start moving like their breath was moving. I mean, I think like the sky's really the limit, not to be super cliche and say that, but like I think you can use it in different places, and even at the end, like, and bam, right there you've done it 3 times, and your heart rate variability, resting heart rate are just like, woo, thank you. Your immune system is saying thank you. Your stress levels are saying thank you. You're giving yourself tools for dealing with like the challenges of life. Like,
Okay, so what other type of pranayama teaching techniques do you like to integrate?
okay, so well, for one, there are a few that I really like, and I think for anyone integrating pranayama into their classes, I always like to teach what I know and what I feel comfortable teaching and practicing. So, my only point is like the pranayama techniques, we'll share some, but there are so many. And if there is a particular something that resonates with you that you can teach and instruct clear and efficiently, then it's fair to include that in your class, and your students will probably get a lot out of it. For me, I really love the practice of Nadi Shodhana, alternate nostril breathing,
Mm-hmm.
because I find it very grounding in energy. Because I mean, where it's mirroring Ida and Pingala energy, so the sun and the moon energy, it is balancing the yin and the yang, if you will, of the fiery action with the need for us to pause and slow down. And so, two other like breath techniques that I would just mention because they're a little different in terms of energy. There's Kapalabhati breathing, so breath of fire. That is a very energizing breath. So good to use if you want to bring up the energy quickly, and very stimulating of the diaphragm. So another health benefit of these techniques is like our diaphragm, which is a giant muscle in our body, is basically getting a workout. So
Totally.
it's the muscle that pumps the air in and out of our lungs and basically creates this vacuum. And so like we want that to have a workout. We want it to be doing stuff. And so these breathing techniques do exactly just that. And so Kapalabhati is a big one on that front. And then even like the Brahmari breath, the bumblebee breathing technique where you like sound like a bumblebee, where you're like, and you feel the vibration in your throat. Like when I'm teaching a chakra class on the fifth chakra,
Mm.
I think it's fun and very stimulating to include that type of pranayama for noticing where you feel sensation. And not everybody will feel that in their throat. You could feel it deeper in your chest. You could even feel it lower in your belly, depending on how you're engaging it. So I think just depending on your intention, there's an opportunity to use different breathing techniques that fit the mood of the class.
Yeah, I like that you say fit the mood. And I like how you brought up this idea of like, oh, well, a 6 a.m. class, probably maybe what you would cue or want to pursue is different than a 6 p.m. class. And I've taught this like 7:30 a.m. yoga class for years, and it's on a Saturday. And I always have my students connect. The first couple of moments, we just sit down in a Sukhasana pose, easy pose, which I also just want to say that like Sukhasana is not that easy for everybody. So a comfortable seated position. Okay. Comfortable seated position. And our first moments together are soft gaze, closing the eyes if it works for us, and then just noticing breath. And through breath, that becomes a threshold where we can start to connect with this idea of mindfulness, meditation, dharana, dhyana, whatever it is. It's like focusing on one single point, kind of binding our consciousness to one area, wherever that may be, and then sort of like opening up the spectrum of where we want to go with our meditation. And we're not there for very long. I mean, 1 to 3 minutes at max, but it is a nice way for everybody to sort of center, focus, connect, and then we can start to heighten our practice and get into more the fiery, spicy aspects of our vinyasa. But just noticing breath helps us start to visualize where we want to go with sort of that focused meditation. And then I also am a big fan of intentions and mantra. So whatever that is, it may be a word, it may be a statement, and students really connect with that. And in a way, they can start to focus their meditation based on that mantra. And so I think that's a really accessible way to bring in mindfulness and meditation into a vinyasa style class when everything feels so like quick paced. And I love that you said rah, rah, rah. Like rah, rah, rah can be the vinyasa, like chaturanga, whatever part of it. And then maybe the sis boom ba is the meditation and pranayama aspect.
I love it. I love it. But something that you said about that class that you teach on the weekend stuck out to me. Is also like, so you bring that to your students consistently every morning.
Mm-hmm.
They know they're going to start with that, and it's a combination of pranayama and meditation. And that's kind of like, that's just really cool, because in a way you've created this structure for them to integrate that practice into their lives. They know and have come to expect that from your class. And I mean, even what you were saying just about the mantra piece, that they create and have this inspiration to guide them through the rest of their practice is cool, because then they come to expect that, and that can really move them even beyond the length of the practice. Maybe that's something they take with them into the rest of their day, into the rest of their weekend, into the coming up week. That can really apply to things beyond a physical practice, but more a life practice. I am a fan of the practice of metta meditation, so benevolence or loving kindness, Buddhist practice. And I have integrated it on occasions into a vinyasa class. Usually, to be frank, I think it's possible to bring it into an hour-long class, but the classes that I have integrated that a metta meditation practice into have probably been at least 75 minutes or maybe 90 minutes, just to make that practice feel a little bit more spacious. And what that practice is basically like you're expanding a circle of loving kindness, and you start with yourself. And so it's an internal mantra. An example, it's usually something to the effect of, may I be happy, may I be well, may I have peace. You start with yourself and you expand to someone you love, to someone that's an acquaintance, to someone that challenges you, to groups of people. I mean, to eventually encompass the world, universe, beyond. And the most important thing with this style of meditation is your intention. And so the words themselves don't matter if you don't mean them. And so for me, there's just something really beautiful about this meditation. It's something that honestly I will do without the vinyasa practice, but in its own form, it stands alone really well. But in the middle of a practice where you have been physically exerting yourself very strongly, and you might be really sweaty, you might feel physical fatigue, to take a pause and then send that energy to yourself and then out to others can be a very beautiful, powerful, and unifying thing to experience as an individual, as a community in the Sangha of the class, and then to imagine how this group of people physically moving can affect an energy beyond the space that they're in is cool. So that is one of my favorites.
I like how we've organically sort of addressed when to put pranayama and meditation. You know, I'm sort of a beginner girl, and you are enjoying meditation sort of after like a spicy element, or sort of maybe when you've gotten to the peak of the mountain. And then I think it only makes sense to talk about at the end of class. I mean,
Totally.
it's designed that way, right? To come back to breath and find moments, whether it's in shavasana or a seated position. And
Absolutely. You've been on like the energetic roller coaster, and like you're like coming out that slow pace down to be chill in the chill zone.
it does it, yeah, it's an experience. For I always like to tell my students this when I'm sort of addressing shavasana, because I do teach a lot of beginning yoga students at the college, and it's essentially, you know, when the body, the breath, and the mind are connecting and catching up with one another and crossing the finish line together, and taking that off the mat so you can energetically use that through the challenges or the successes of your day.
I love that. And that's, I mean, that's right on, because that's what in general I think in a lot of ways the intention of the yoga practice is, or at least how it has been presented to us, to find equilibrium, to find balance. And honestly, in that process of being presented that, like honestly in a marketing way, it's lost track of that a little bit, like with some really hyper, um, more fitness types of classes. And I have taught plenty of those, believe me.
Oh yeah, we both have.
We both totally, because we have, I mean, I'll be frank, that was my full-time gig. It still is my full-time gig. And oftentimes, like where there are jobs, I'm like, okay, yes, I'm going to teach this. And I even enjoyed it. And I have also come around to realize that for me at this point in my, not my just life, but in my teaching life, it is of great importance to me to present a practice that has a greater sense of balance and depth. And um, I think with that desire for balance, we have lost it in some of these more like fitness style yoga classes. So it is a nice way for us as teachers to kind of take the reins and take the responsibility. And I also think studio owners and managers should do the same thing ideally as well, but to take the reins of really making that a priority just as much as the highly physical element. And because pranayama is quite physical as well, it's just not like, something cool to look at on the gram kind of thing. So
yeah, asana always gets it's just that it's sort of the bossy side seat driver that just keeps on telling you, oh, turn here. Oh, there's a shortcut here. This is a faster way. Get in this lane. You can beat the traffic. And it's really just about pranayama and really pranayama driving the car. That's the breath is opening it up, right? It's bringing us closer to meditation. It's connecting our physical practice towards our sort of energetic self. So we're moving that energy around. And it helps us create significant moments where we can connect to something beyond our individual way of operating and existing, right? So I can't prioritize enough how important it is for teachers and practitioners to really focus on how the breath is opening up passageways to embody more physical moments and more internal moments.
totally. I couldn't agree more. And I know we spoke a little bit about some specific health benefits, so we'll also try to include like the references for that. So if you're really curious about understanding the science of why and how pranayama can have such a powerful impact on you, how a meditation practice has such a powerful impact on your health and well-being, we'll give you some links to do a little more digging for yourself.
Well, I want to thank everybody for listening and hanging out with us today. I hope you enjoyed our rapport and our content, and we look forward to sharing more episodes with you guys in the future. So make sure that you connect with us again. So goodbye for now. May your peace be long.
May your planks be strong.
And may your prana root you in each and every present moment. Bye, friends. Take good care.
Ciao.